Hey guys, tonight we ease into the forgotten stillness of a married woman's life in the Khmer Empire. Not the loud parts, no coronations, no temples bursting with music and incense. No, we begin in the dust, in the early morning hush where the fire hasn't quite caught yet, and your shadow stretches longer than you feel. You know what's strange? Most people never wonder what the first sound of a royal Khmer woman's day might be. Not a gong, not a greeting, just the soft scrape of dried coconut husk across stone, coaxing flame from yesterday's ashes. It's not dramatic, but it's where everything begins. In this world, silence is louder than speech. Routine is holier than scripture, and you're at the center of it, whether you ask to be or not. You'll be seen without being heard, expected without being asked. You probably won't survive this, at least not the version of you that thinks ritual is optional. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge barefoot across the damp wooden floor, long before the roosters dare break the horizon. The air still clings to the dreams of night, thick, warm, tinged with smoke, and the faint, sour perfume of tamarind leaves soaking in clay pots. The sky hasn't begun its slow yawn into gold yet. You don't wait for it. You crouch in the corner of your home, that raised wooden stilt house crouched over the earth like an old animal, and begin the daily fire ritual. No one calls it that out loud, but that's what it is. You take last night's husk and last week's ash, mound it just so, and blow, softly, like you're waking a sleeping god. You do it with your body bent, your mouth pursed, not unlike prayer, not unlike offering. There's an old belief here, some still whisper it, that the way you start your fire determines the way your household breathes that day. You wonder who first decided that. Maybe it was a wife, just like you, trying to find meaning in a morning that never changes. The coals catch. A lazy thread of smoke spirals up and coils against the thatched ceiling, like it's thinking about leaving, but never does. You know that feeling. Next is rice, always rice. You rinse it twice, 3 times if your mother-in-law is awake. Not because it's dirty, because if the water's cloudy, the future will be too. That's not written anywhere, but every woman over 40 in the village knows it. The pot is iron and heavy, seasoned with 100 breakfasts. You know it's balanced better than your own breathing. Into it goes the rice. A few drops of oil, a sliver of ginger maybe. You hum a song your grandmother taught you. Not because it's pretty, but because it keeps the ghost in the corner quiet. And they are watching. The spirits of the house sneak to old as the earth under your house, and far more opinionated. You offer them a pinch of rice, still raw. Set it in a banana leaf and place it on the low altar, wedged beside the back door. You don't look them in the eye. You never do. Just a bow. Just a breath. Because they see your intentions clearer than your face. Historians still argue whether this form of household spirit worship had roots in Hinduism, animism, or some syncretic tangle of the two, but for you, it's not about origin stories. It's about not angering something you can't outrun. The first cup of water is for the ancestor shelf, always. You pour it slow, let it glisten. The wooden figures of your husband's lineage stare down from their perch, stoic and small, surrounded by faded offerings and the faint scent of sandalwood. Sometimes you think you hear them breathing. Sometimes you think you want to. No one tells you this when you marry, that you're marrying more than a man. You're marrying the memory of his mother's grief, the shape of his grandmother's silences, and the rules carved by women you'll never meet, but who still keep score. Your own breakfast, that comes last. If there's time, if the offerings are pleasing, the rice doesn't burn. The fire doesn't die mid-boil. You nibble without sitting. Perch on the edge of a stool like you're apologizing for the act of chewing. That's the shape your mornings take. A quiet performance of obligation wrapped in smoke and breath and repetition. But if someone were to visit, say, a noble guest or a passing priest, they would see calm, grace, domestic serenity. You'd be the portrait of Khmer femininity, demure, efficient, sacred. They'd never guess how much of your mind is spent calculating. Did you light the incense facing the right direction today? Did the spirits notice you hesitated before bowing? Was that dream you had last night a warning? Even your sweat is a kind of offering. You clean the floor with coconut husk and hot water. Not because it's dirty, but because that's what married women do. To keep the house smooth, to keep the blessings flowing. There's a saying in the countryside, a house where dust is allowed to gather is a house where sorrow won't leave. You aren't sure if that's true, but you clean anyway. And outside, the world is beginning to stir. Men's voices rise with the light. Your husband might be strapping on his belt, adjusting the talisman tied to his wrist. The children are still curled under thin woven blankets, dreams thick in their heads. But you're here, already clean, already moving. The sun hasn't even had the courtesy to show up yet, and yet your work is half done. A curious tidbit. Some elite Khmer women of high-ranking households were forbidden from walking outside before a specific hour, not for modesty, but because it was believed that their shadows, cast at the wrong angle, might offend local spirits. That rule didn't apply to you. Of course, you were not born into power. You wake with the wind, walk with the smoke, and pray you never misstep with the invisible. The strange thing is, you don't feel resentful. Not exactly. These rituals aren't punishment. They're armor. Each small motion is a deflection. Each gesture, a shield. You stir the pot. You test the rice. You check the direction of the incense smoke. If it blows east, good fortune. If it curls down, someone's lying. You don't say who. You already know. The gods don't punish women here. They just forget the ones who stop observing. And so you continue. You adjust the shawl over your shoulder, tuck the errant lock of hair behind your ear, and look at the morning sun finally piercing through the woven slats of the wall. You've done it again. Survived another morning ritual. Not glorious, not written into stone, but sacred, in the way repetition becomes prayer. You pull the shawl tighter around your shoulders, even though the air is already warming, and begin the second dance of the day, the one with your hair. Not for vanity, not to impress anyone. In fact, your husband won't even glance at it unless it's wildly out of place. But the women will, the older ones, especially the way your hair is parted, whether the oils have soaked in properly, if your ends are too dry or your braids too loose. Every detail is read like a scripture. You sit on the low stool by the carved window frame, fingers moving by memory, and twist the strands with more intention than most people pray. It's not about looking good. It's about speaking clearly without saying a word. Because here, your body is language. Your hair, your dress, your earrings. They say what you're not allowed to. Your mother told you this when you were 9 and watching her prepare for a neighbor's naming ceremony. You don't talk with your mouth after marriage, she whispered, adjusting her coil of jet black hair with a comb carved from bone. You talk with this. She tapped the side of her head, and then her wrist, where a golden bangle shimmered like sunlight trapped in a circle. And she was right. In this empire of towering temples and silent glances, women speak in layers. Layers of fabric, layers of ritual, layers of performance. You finish coiling the hair in a loop knot, secured with a wooden pin tipped in gold. The ornament is old, passed down from your grandmother's grandmother, or so you were told. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that it shows your lineage. A woman with no heirlooms is a woman with no roots, no protection. Even in cities like Angkor Thom, where sandstone towers crowd the skyline and men parade in royal regalia, everyone notices a woman's hairpiece before they hear her name. A subtle truth in the Khmer Empire. Memory was stored in metal and silk, not ink. You wear your family, quite literally. Today you choose not to part your hair down the middle. That's the style of mourning. You learned that the hard way once, years ago, when your sister-in-law wore a central parting after a festival, and 3 women asked whose child had died. She had to laugh it off, but you saw the shame burn through her cheeks like fire-licking dry rice paper. You never forgot. Instead, you sweep your part slightly off-center, a style reserved for the married women in good standing, not too far, though lest someone think you're being flirtatious. You think that's absurd. But absurdity doesn't protect you from gossip. Ritual does. You slip on your sarong dyed indigo with fine golden threading near the hem and knot it at your waist with practiced grace. A sash goes over your shoulder, folded just so, not too tight, not too loose. That fold matters more than anyone will admit. If it's uneven, people might say your home life is unbalanced. If it's too tight, they might whisper that your marriage is strained. You laugh at the thought, but only inside. A woman laughing out loud while dressing is not ideal. It suggests carelessness, and no one wants to be a careless wife, not here. Textiles speak in a grammar older than most temples. There's a hidden code in the weave, certain patterns only married women wear. Certain silks imported from Champa worn only on holy days. You once saw a woman wear the wrong pattern to a cremation ceremony, and the monk refused to look her in the eyes. No one explained why, but everyone understood. You've since learned to recloth like scripture. Each thread tells a story. The lotus motif says rebirth. The deer says loyalty. The naga serpent, protection from betrayal. You wear all three, when you can, woven into the skirt's edge, quiet armor. Some women mark their skin directly, not just for beauty. Tattoos, inked with lemon oil and charcoal, whisper prayers through the body. You've got one too, though no one but your sister knows where it is, just behind your left knee, hidden beneath the hem. It's a charm for endurance. You asked the old woman who inked it what it meant, and she said, "It means you'll outlast things." When you asked her what things, she only smiled. You haven't asked since. Scholars still debate whether these tattoos were spiritual or decorative. But for you, the answer is obvious. They're neither. They're spells. Quiet, humming spells stitched into skin when words are too dangerous. Your jewelry comes next. And this part is tricky. If you wear too little, someone will say your husband is stingy. If you wear too much, someone will say you're trying to tempt a higher-ranking man. You choose 3 bangles on one wrist, a thin anklet with no bells because only girls wear bells, and small golden ear ornaments shaped like lotus buds. One of them is slightly dented. You think of replacing it, but then decide not to. The dent reminds you of the week your son had a fever and you slept beside the hearth, offering him spoonfuls of crushed banana and ginger while the storm outside nearly tore the roof off. You wore those earrings then. They'd bent when you fell asleep sitting up, and maybe they protect you now because of it. A strange but true detail, some noble Khmer women once wore tiny pouches sewn into their belts, containing a single strand of their husband's hair plucked during sleep and kept for control. Not out of malice, but as a subtle magical safeguard. You don't do that, but you have a strip of dyed cloth tucked deep in your sash, a blessing from a temple woman you once helped, years ago, during a fever. She said it would keep your womb safe. You're not even sure it's still there, but you feel better pretending it is. You step outside now, dressed but still quiet, and the light hits your earrings just right, just enough to make the spirit of your husband's grandmother, who lingers near the roof beam, stop clucking her tongue. She hasn't said anything since the snake dream, but you know she's there, and you know she approves, because that's another part they never teach you. Your appearance is not just for the living, the dead watch too, and they remember. You nod to the neighbor's daughter as she passes by, eyes lowered, sash mismatched. Poor girl, she'll learn, or she won't, but the old women will remember, and that memory has teeth. You walk past the drying chili pods and the hanging strips of fish, already buzzing with flies, and head toward the back of the house. The hen coop needs checking, but more importantly, you need space. Just a moment to breathe, alone. Because sometimes, in all this performance, you forget there's a person under the hairpins and jasmine oil. A woman, tired, a little bored, but still dreaming. That's your secret rebellion, dreaming. And just before you re-enter the house, you pause by the stone basin, look at your reflection in the water, and adjust a single hair that's come loose. Not because it matters, but because it does. The water is warm by now. Steeped in the jasmine petals you crush between your fingers at dawn, because even your cleansing has a script. You don't just bathe, you perform a ritual, timed by habit and filtered through a lens no one else sees. You squat beside the large clay jar and scoop water in a copper bowl polished smooth from years of repetition. It's not about dirt, it's about balance. The Khmer believe water has memory that it can carry away not only sweat, but also the echo of unspoken thoughts. If you're angry when you bathe, the household will feel it. If you're sorrowful, your children will sleep restlessly. So you learn to smile into the splash, even when your mind is louder than the birds starting to cry in the trees. There's a way to pour it too, over your left shoulder first, then your right, then the top of your head, never your back. Pouring water down your back draws spirits you can't see, spirits that might ride you, whisper wrong things in your ear, or worse, slip into your womb and nest. You remember a neighbor once muttering that her miscarriage came after a careless rinse on an unlucky moon. Historians still argue whether Khmer bathing rituals came from Indian influence or evolved through indigenous animist beliefs. But in your hands, neither source matters. All that matters is the chill on your skin, the echo of the copper bowl, and the whisper in your spine telling you to pour slowly. Don't rush. The water listens. Soap isn't always needed. Sometimes you use crushed bark. Other times turmeric paste left overnight to absorb moonlight. Today, you use ground rice mixed with palm sugar because it's a day of peace, and you need your skin to hum with sweetness. You rub it into your arms, your legs, your neck, all while sitting on a woven mat that's never allowed to touch your feet first. That would be disrespectful. So you kneel, then turn, then settle, like every motion is being watched. And maybe it is. There's a frog sitting on the rim of the jar, blinking slowly at you. You half joke to yourself that he's the reincarnation of your great uncle, still judging you for eating too quickly at his funeral. You smile, then splash. After you bathe, you must wait. You must dry in a certain rhythm, first the head, then shoulders, then arms, then finally your legs. It's not superstition, it's memory. Your aunt used to say that women who dry their legs first grow selfish. You thought it ridiculous when you were little, but now you find yourself following the sequence like a lullaby, because part of you believes, or at least wants to believe, that structure keeps the chaos out. And in a house ruled by shifting winds, biting insects, a husband's moods, and a mother-in-law's sharp eyes, you need something to anchor you, even if it's just a towel. You wrap your sarong fresh again, this time with a tighter knot. Not the ceremonial fold, this one is functional. You pin a sprig of lemongrass inside, not for fashion, but for protection. Lemongrass repels spirits and men's wandering eyes. It's said to confuse evil energy, though you suspect it mostly just smells strong enough to make people squint. Either way, it works. You comb your fingers through your hair one last time. Careful not to let strands fall into the water jar, those could be used against you. After all, a shrewd woman once told you that even a single strand of hair left in the wrong hands can make a husband stop loving you, can make your womb dry, can twist your face in your sleep. You scoop out the few that slipped loose and burn them near the cooking hearth, just in case. The bathing ritual is sacred, but its sanctity isn't spoken of. It's observed in the pauses, the way your daughter watches you from behind a basket of wet laundry, the way she mimics the splash, the twist, the tilt of your head. She's learning you, not just what you do, but how you endure. Because in Khmer society, a married woman's bath isn't leisure. It's layered with expectations. If you stay too long, you're lazy, too short, and you're unhygienic. If you bathe before the rooster, you're ambitious. If after, careless. There's no perfect time, just acceptable margins. Curiously, in the palace, high-ranking women reportedly had separate bathhouses, walled in with lattice screens where servants poured scented water through carved spouts shaped like nagas. You've never seen one, but once a cousin told you the queen's favorite bath had gold leaf along the inner rim and petals arranged in constellations. You couldn't imagine such extravagance. Here, a bath is a jar, a scoop, and a prayer, and somehow, it's enough. After drying, you sit by the window and press your feet against the sun-warmed wood, letting the last droplets evaporate as you prepare to anoint your body. Not with perfume though, sometimes you use floral oil, but with meaning. You dab temple points with sesame oil mixed with ground root. One dot at the center of the forehead, another behind each ear. These are your quiet shields, your morning armor. When done, you whisper the blessing your mother taught you. Let no one's bitterness stick to me today. It's not an official chant, but it works. or at least it feels like it might. Then comes the fire ritual again. Not to cook this time, but to purify. You light a sliver of sandalwood and waft the smoke around your limbs. Clockwise, always clockwise. If you go counter, it's a reversal, a dangerous invitation. You once went counterclockwise in a rush and spilled soup later that day burned your hand. Coincidence? Maybe, but you never did it again. You've learned that small things matter here. Tiny mistakes ripple like cracks in glass, not immediately visible, but always spreading. And now, finally, you eat, or rather, nibble, because women don't feast in the mornings. You sip rice water and chew a slice of boiled banana, soft and sticky, its sweetness grounding. The rice water is flavored with ginger and lemongrass. Again, not for taste, but for balance. The elders say it aligns the three elements of the body wind, fire and water. You don't know the science, but it settles your stomach. You feel ready, but even then, you don't just eat. You angle your body so the back door remains open behind you. Because if your back is to the exit, misfortune might settle behind your spine, like a jealous relative waiting for an invitation. These things aren't explained in scrolls or temple walls. They're whispered, watched, absorbed. You didn't learn them. You became them. You hear the low shuffle of your husband rising. You place your bowl down gently, not because you're afraid, but because it's time to shift. The private part of the morning, the bathing, the anointing, the whispering is over. Now comes the performance. The part where you offer the world a version of you that looks calm, composed, and maybe even beautiful, even if you're aching or angry or half dreaming of other lives. But you never let that show, because your rituals are a kind of theater, one where no one applauds, but everyone is watching. The pot has already begun to boil when your husband steps into the room, his bare feet muffled on the wooden planks, his eyes half lidded with sleep, and something else, a kind of expectation that's heavier than speech. You don't speak yet. That's part of it too. Mornings belong to gesture, not words. You lift the ladle just enough for him to see it, not too high, lest it be mistaken for pride. There's no need for him to ask what's inside. It's always rice gruel in the early hour, thin enough to stretch, thick enough to pretend. You set the bowls down with the edge of your thumb, just brushing the base, silent acknowledgement that this meal is not for you. Not yet. Because in this world, married women eat after others have been fed. You've known this since girlhood, when you watched your mother press her lips closed, even as her stomach growled. Today, you add a sprig of crushed holy basil to his bowl because you remember he coughed last night in his sleep, and because it's the kind of care he won't notice but will feel. You lower your eyes as you place the bowl before him, not in submission, but in ritual. It's said in some villages that if a wife locks eyes with her husband as she serves food, the house spirits become jealous. You don't know if that's true, but why risk it? Even your posture must be part of the offering. Your knees don't crack when you kneel anymore. They've learned the rhythm. You shift your weight onto the same side every time. It's muscle memory now. Devotion worn into the joints. Once, in your cousin's home, a girl tried to serve her husband with a flourish. She spoke first, laughed, even touched his shoulder before the meal, and he smiled. Yes, but later everyone whispered. Her mother-in-law fell ill for weeks. Her sister's wedding was postponed. Coincidence? Maybe. But you've lived long enough to know that coincidence doesn't survive long in a Khmer household. Patterns do, rituals do, and you've learned that your role isn't to change the current, it's to flow within it, so precisely no one notices the depth you carry. The children wake as the last scoop of rice hits the bowl. Their feet thump on the floor like falling fruit. You glance toward the doorway, already reaching for the smaller bowls set aside for them. Each one has a lotus mark carved faintly at the bottom, a symbol to remind them, when they're old enough to notice, that purity begins in the unseen. You know one day your daughter will copy you. She'll tilt the bowl the same way. She'll hide her anger behind gentle movements. You ache a little at that thought, but also feel proud, because survival is an art, and you're a silent master. And yet, before any of them take a bite, you move to the back of the kitchen where the offering tray sits, carved from wood darkened by years of use, its edges chipped, but its meaning sharp. You place a small portion of food on it, a spoonful of rice, a cut of banana, a pinch of salt, then you bow, once, deeply. This is for the spirits, for the ancestors, for the unseen presences that keep the household balanced. You place the tray on the small platform near the kitchen post, the spine of the house, where energy is said to enter and leave. Some scholars believe this practice blends Brahmanic influence with the local animist customs, a living symbol of Khmer cultural fusion. But you don't call it fusion, you call it survival. You whisper a short phrase, not a full prayer. Just something like, "May today be clean." That's all. Because not every day will be good, but clean. That you can ask for. You know the spirits prefer modest requests. You watch your husband eat without looking up, the steam curling between you like a line you're not meant to cross. Sometimes he says thank you. Sometimes he doesn't. That's not the point. You feed him because that is the pulse of the house. Because your role is not to be praised, but to preserve rhythm. And when the children finally take their place, squatting on small stools, slurping greedily, you let yourself smile, just a little. This moment, brief and simple, is a kind of holiness. The food was blessed, the fire held, no one argued, the spirits are full. That's a victory. Only when they are done, when the bowls have been set aside, when the noise fades into the creak of beams and the shuffle of feet, do you finally sit. Your meal is plain. A scoop of leftovers, cooled, a few slices of mango pickled with salt and sugar. But somehow, it tastes richer than the morning feast. Maybe because you made it. Maybe because you earned it. Maybe because no one is watching now. But then you feel it, the weight of the gaze from the doorway. It's your husband's mother. She doesn't speak. She never needs to. The way she looks at the pot, the spoon, the stain on the side of the stove you missed yesterday, that's a whole language. You bow your head again, as if to listen. She nods, turns, and disappears into the back room. It's a small victory. You will count it. Feeding the house is more than just food. You sweep the floor after breakfast, not just to clean, but to send away any lingering negative energy. You sweep toward the door, always out, never in. Inward sweeping pulls misfortune into the home. You toss the sweepings near the beetle trees, which are believed to neutralize residual anger. You were told once that feeding the spirits and feeding the house are the same, that a home starved of ritual will rot from the inside. You don't doubt it. You burn dried citrus peel on a small clay burner, letting the smoke rise into the beams, whispering through the spaces where geckos skitter. Your daughter claps her hands and watches the smoke dance. You smile, but gently remind her not to point. Pointing at sacred smoke invites forgetfulness. She looks confused, then nods, absorbing another rule she won't question until she's older. You watch her tuck that knowledge away like a secret bead in a growing necklace of womanhood. You step outside to empty the basin and pause. A breeze stirs the banana leaves. Somewhere, a dog barks. The world is wider than your walls, but you feel no envy for it today. Because here, in this narrow space of bamboo and routine, you've done something few notice. You've fed gods and children, ghosts and men, without raising your voice or claiming your name. That's its own kind of strength. And you know what's funny? No one will write this down. No stone in Angkor bears the carving of a woman sweeping rice husks into the wind. No bas-relief shows you crouched by the fire, muttering blessings over basil leaves. But still, the empire stands. The temples still cast shadows. The ancestors still eat. And somewhere in the middle of that is you, spoon in hand, heart tucked behind your ribs like a second offering, too sacred to speak aloud. The sun climbs higher now, slicing the courtyard into uneven gold and shadow as you stand at the loom. Not a grand loom, no. Not the kind seen in temple carvings worked by noble women surrounded by silken bolts and servants. Yours is a creaking wooden frame, older than your marriage. Its joints tied with fibers you replaced yourself last season. Still, it holds. You sit cross-legged before it, careful to tuck your sarong beneath your knees so the threads don't brush bare skin. Bad luck, they say, to let the cloth touch you before it's finished. Not because it will stain your skin, but because it will stain your thoughts. And you know by now that everything you weave carries more than color. It carries meaning, memory, and the unspoken politics of your house. You select the threads with the practiced eye of someone who's memorized more than she's ever admitted. You choose the indigo symbol of patience, the saffron symbol of virtue, and crimson, your small rebellion. Crimson isn't just color, it's blood, pulse, heat. Wives aren't supposed to use it on ordinary days, but you slip it in, just along the edge, enough to make a quiet statement to the right eyes. Because this isn't just weaving, it's narration. You're telling a story, not aloud, but in warp and weft. Every married woman in the Khmer Empire knew this unspoken language, how to blend silk and cotton into a sentence, how to embed a warning into a border. The pattern you work on today is the Naga serpent guardian of sacred waters. Some say the Naga protects the household, others say it wards off male infidelity. You suspect both are true. You saw this pattern once on a robe gifted to a priest's daughter after her betrothal. She looked terrified, but the robe was exquisite, and the message was clear. She had been claimed, shielded, marked. Textiles did what no law could. They wrapped a woman in power, silent and soft, but unmistakable. You press the shuttle through the threads, back and forth, the wooden rhythm soothing and endless. Your hands move automatically, but your mind drifts. You think about your sister, married off to a man in the western provinces. She wrote once that her new mother-in-law forbade her from using yellow silk because it was too bright for a second wife. You still keep that letter in your sash box, between packets of dried betel leaf and a lock of your son's hair from his first haircut. You've never replied. What would you say? That she should be grateful, that she should rebel? Neither would help her. So you just keep weaving, because weaving is safer than speaking, because fabric, at least, obeys your hands. Across the courtyard, a neighbor is beating a bolt of cloth with a flat paddle to soften it. The sound echoes like a slow heartbeat. You pause for a moment and glance over. Her back is bent, her shoulders sunburned. You wonder what story she's weaving today. Is it sorrow? Is it warning? Is it simply survival? You exchange a nod. Nothing more. That's enough. In this empire, female companionship rarely arrives in words. It arrives in mirrors, actions quietly mirrored across courtyards, across generations, across fate. And then come the tattoos. You shift slightly, allowing the edge of your sarong to slide just enough to reveal a sliver of ink etched into the inside of your left thigh, barely visible, unless someone knows to look. It's a looping pattern of vines, thorns, and an abstract spiral in the center. You were 16 when the old ink woman burned the design into your skin using a thorn and soot from your family's hearth. It took hours. You bit down on a tamarind root to keep from crying out. Your mother didn't watch, but she stood at the door the whole time. When it was over, she brought warm broth with floating lotus seeds and whispered, "Now, you're guarded." Historians still debate whether these protective tattoos originated from warrior customs or were adapted into domestic femininity as a subtle rebellion. All you know is that no one touches you without touching that symbol first. And you like it that way. Some women have ink behind their ears, others at the nape of their necks, visible only when hair is tied high. Each mark a vow, a ward, a signature, even if you can't speak your boundaries. Your skin does. You shift back and continue weaving. One thread slips. You catch it, realign, and in that moment, you remember a phrase an older woman once muttered at a temple ceremony. If your threads are crooked, your thoughts will follow. You didn't understand it then. You do now. The loom is more than tool. It's a test, a mirror. You straighten the line and smooth it with your palm, whispering a small phrase under your breath, one only women use. Let my labor speak where I cannot. Because the truth is, this cloth, once finished, might become part of a dowry, or it might wrap a newborn, or it might line the bottom of a monk's alms basket, or, if misfortune comes, it might be burned with your body to keep your soul from wandering. So, it must be right. It must hold more than fiber. It must hold intention. Your fingers pause as you consider adding the diamond motif reserved for the marriage longevity. You hesitate. You're not superstitious. You tell yourself, but you've been married long enough to know that small gestures matter. The diamond goes in, small, near the hem, like a whisper. In noble houses, it's said that women wove prayers directly into their cloth, threading in tiny written glyphs known only to them, visible only under flame. You've never seen one, but you believe it. You've felt it, those old heirlooms that hum when touched, that seem to carry voices. Your grandmother once wrapped you in such a cloth when you were sick, and you could have sworn the fever broke not from medicine, but from memory. You lean back slightly, arch your back until it pops, and exhale. The pattern is coming together, slowly, as it should, because speed isn't holy. Precision is, and suddenly, the wind shifts. A dry, brittle gust rustles the jackfruit leaves outside. You frown. It's an odd breeze, unseasonal. You feel a prickle at the base of your spine. It's not fear, not exactly, just awareness. You reach for a small pouch hanging from a nail beside the loom and untie it. Inside, a folded strip of palm leaf manuscript, a charm blessed by a traveling monk seasons ago. You press it to your forehead, then tuck it back, just in case the wind carried something with it. A word, a curse, a gaze. The loom creaks, the threads stretch, and you return to work, because in this world, a woman's weaving is her sentence, sometimes a prayer, sometimes a warning, always a map. And you're drawing your path one thread at a time. You finish the last line of the Naga pattern just as the sun tips past its highest point, and the air thickens with that silent heaviness only midday knows. Your shoulders ache not with pain, exactly, but with the weight of continuity. You fold the cloth gently, carefully, pressing the creases along old lines, and wrap it in banana leaf before storing it beneath your sleeping mat. Cloth holds scent, holds memory, and more importantly, holds intention. You don't want anyone touching it, not the children, not the neighbors, not even your husband. Not yet. Not until the pattern has rested. You were taught that a fresh weave must sleep before it speaks, and if disturbed too soon, it may turn against its maker, not in rage, but in silence. And silence, as you've learned, can be more dangerous than wrath. With the cloth hidden, you rise and rinse your hands with water steeped in pandan leaves and ground rice, fragrant, smooth, sacred. Then you begin the slow walk across the compound to the edge of the property, where the offering stone rests under a frangipani tree. There, in the hush of branches and the low hum of insects, you prepare the bowl for the monk's visit. He comes once every 5 days, barefoot, silent, radiant in his saffron robe, his presence like a blade wrapped in silk. But even if he didn't come today, the bowl must be ready. That's the rule. You never know when a monk might appear, and you never, ever, let him arrive without preparation. That would be like slamming the temple door in the face of karma. You place a few slices of jackfruit, a lump of sticky rice, a dried fish wrapped in betel leaf. Modest, yes, but pure. You fold your hands and bow low until your forehead brushes the stone, and wait. Even if he doesn't come, you stay a little while, because stillness is part of the ritual too, and even the empty space is sacred. That's something men often forget, how women don't just fill roles. They hold silence. They make it livable. A soft shuffle of footsteps alerts you. He's here. Not your usual monk. This one is younger, thinner, eyes sunken from fasting. You don't look up. You never look up. A woman must not make direct eye contact with a monk, not unless she wants to tempt the imbalance between celibacy and memory. And you have no interest in stirring what should sleep. You extend the offering without touching. His alms bowl lowers, and you place the food inside with 2 fingers and a breath. He murmurs a chant. You don't respond. You only bow again, once, as the scriptures require. Then he is gone, vanishing into the path lined with dried coconut fronds. You exhale, long and slow. Your daughter, watching from the window, tilts her head. She asks why you don't speak to the monk, why you look at the ground, why you kneel even though he is young. You consider how to answer. You can't say, because the world is structured like layers of silk, delicate, slippery, and always watching. So instead, you say, because silence is also prayer, and she nods. Even if she doesn't understand, she will. Later, you wash the alms bowl with the lime peel and ash, your hands moving gently over the metal, This bowl touched a monk, it carries residue of purity. You must cleanse it with equal respect. No soap, just smoke and peel. You dry it under the sun, then store it upside down near the shrine. And not once do you touch your face during the process. It's said that if you bring monk's energy too close to your eyes, your dreams may become prophetic, and prophetic dreams are rarely gifts. They're burdens, and you already carry enough. You sit again in the shaded part of the kitchen, sipping tamarind water to cool your body. But your thoughts drift. You remember the story of the woman from the southern village, the one who touched a monk's robe by accident while handing him rice. She didn't mean to, but her hand brushed the edge of the cloth, and that night, her house caught fire. Her family said it was a lamp knocked over by the wind, but the old women still whisper it was the robe's revenge. Whether true or not, the lesson holds: distance is safety, reverence is survival, and boundaries, even spiritual ones, are policed most strictly by women themselves. Still, there's a strange intimacy in the rituals you share with monks, even without words. The folding of their robes after they've passed, the careful placement of water jugs along their walking paths, the way you adjust your cooking schedule so that smoke won't rise during their chanting hours. It's not affection, it's choreography. A precise, silent dance between two existences meant never to touch, but always to orbit. And though no one says it aloud, everyone knows it's women who keep monks from breaking, not with seduction, with order. And maybe, deep down, the monks know this too. Maybe that's why they never refuse your food. Maybe that's why they linger a little longer outside the gates of homes where the offerings are wrapped with care. Maybe that's why they sometimes pause just briefly when they see a mother braid her daughter's hair with flowers before dawn. You think again of that younger monk's eyes, not lustful, not curious, just tired. You wonder how many women he's watched bow like you, how many mothers, how many widows. You wonder if he remembers any of them, or if they all blur into one long, kneeling shadow. You wonder if it matters. You hope it doesn't. Inside the house, your husband calls your name. You rise, brush the dust from your knees, and answer not in words, but with footsteps. Because for married women, footsteps are language. The pace, the weight, the pause at the door, all of it is read. You quicken slightly enough to suggest attentiveness, but not panic. He asks if the monk came. You nod. He grunts. That's enough. You set about preparing the next round of water for drinking. Not boiling this one must be blessed. You add a coin to the bottom of the jar, then a string soaked in temple oil. You chant the old phrase under your breath. Clear water, clear path. It's not part of any official scripture, but your grandmother swore it kept the household from fracturing. You've said it every week for years. You don't remember when it became automatic, but you remember when you stopped needing to believe in it to keep doing it. Some rituals become true by repetition alone. And even now, as the light wanes slightly and the heat curls into the corners of the roof, you think about tomorrow, about the next monk, the next offering, the next silence, and how you'll meet it all again, with the same bowed head, the same careful hands, not because you are voiceless, but because the ritual is the voice, and in a world where so much is decided by others, you've learned to leave your imprint in places no one expects, in folded robes, in clean bowls, in the quiet geometry of reverence. The heat softens now, curling into the folds of the sky like silk resting on warm stone, and you glance toward the calendar pinned with a wooden needle. Above your cooking hearth, not a calendar of months and markets, but of moons and blood. The lunar script is simple to the untrained eye: curved slivers, dots, and looping glyphs, but you read it like a second skin, because this calendar doesn't just mark time, it rules the shape of your marriage. You trace the symbols with your fingertip and realize tonight is noon, huh? The night of release. It means you may share your husband's bed again. You nod once, quietly, to no one, as if to say, I already knew. And you did. Not because of the calendar, but because your body has already begun its shift, a warming in the soles of your feet, a strange sense of hunger that's not for food. You begin to prepare, not out of desire, necessarily, but out of duty, and something more complicated, something like choreography, because intimacy in your world is not spontaneous. It is governed by moons, by shadows, by rules older than the marriage itself. In the Khmer Empire, the moon tells women when their bodies belong to themselves, and when they are expected to become vessels again. And men well. They say they follow the moon too, but you know better. They follow convenience, you follow rhythm. You tie your sarong a little higher, the knot a little tighter, and rinse your wrists in rose water mixed with ash from 3 sacred woods. This is not perfume, it's purification. You do not scent your body to attract. You scent it to cleanse. That is the difference. You rub a soft balm behind your ears and on your neck. Then place a single blossom frangipani, pale and full above your left ear. That placement matters. The right side means mourning. The left, invitation. But not every woman observes that now. You do, because the older women are watching. You light the small clay lamp in your sleeping quarters and place 3 stones around it, each a different shape, a different prayer, one to protect your mind, one to shield your dreams, one to remember who you are. Then you kneel and offer a folded palm leaf charm at the altar near your bed, a tiny thing, tied with red string, its glyphs barely visible. It's said to ensure peace between husband and wife. You found it months ago, buried in the bottom of your grandmother's basket, and felt your fingers heat when you touched it. That was enough. You hear him come in. The weight of his footstep tells you whether he's in a good mood. Tonight, it's even balanced. You exhale. That's a blessing. You stand, eyes lowered just enough, and offer him tea lukewarm, flavored with star anise and roasted rice. He drinks, says nothing, sets it down. The silence between you stretches like silk being pulled taut across a loom. You're used to this silence. It doesn't scare you anymore. And then, the ritual begins. You untie the curtain that separates the bed mat from the rest of the room, not quickly, not too slowly. Timing is everything. The curtain does not hide. It signals. It says, tonight, the world outside will wait. You kneel by the mat and adjust the pillows. Smooth the woven blanket. Place a bowl of flower water at the foot, its scent meant to soothe nightmares and encourage fertility. All of this is done without direct eye contact, without explanation, without sound. Because in this empire, intimacy is not a conversation, it is a sequence. You remember your wedding night, when the older women walked you into the room with a betel leaf in your hands and red lacquer on your fingertips. They told you nothing, just smiled, closed the curtain, and waited. You cried that night not from fear, but from confusion, from realizing that so much of marriage is silence, that love, in this place, is assumed, not explained, that the rituals would replace the questions, and somehow they did. You finish arranging the bed. He hasn't spoken, but he watches. That's enough. You step back, palms pressed together, and bow once not out of obedience, but out of rhythm. Then you sit, legs folded, waiting. There is no rush. There never is. The moon rises slowly above the courtyard, casting pale patterns through the latticework window. It paints your shoulder in silver. You think of your mother, and her mother, and all the women who have knelt in this same light, waiting for the same moment, on the same calendar night. Historians still argue whether these bed rituals were more religious or a political part of Hindu custom, or perhaps Buddhist influence repurposed to reinforce domestic harmony. You don't know what label to give it. You only know how it feels not sacred, not shameful, just inevitable, like rain, like dusk, like inheritance. You shift slightly, adjusting your shawl so that it slips down just a little, not too far. There's no seduction here, only permission. He understands. He moves. The moment passes, and afterward, you both lie still, not touching, not speaking, just breathing in unison. And in that silence, there's something close to peace. But even that has a ritual. You rise before him, again, and cleanse yourself not because you feel unclean, but because the body must return to balance. You use a mixture of herbs, lemongrass, betel root, and tamarind. You whisper a small chant your aunt taught you something about releasing the breath of another. Then you light a thin stick of incense and place it by the window, not near the altar, just in the open. That tells the spirits this was a shared night. Do not interfere. You lie back down only after the incense is half gone. You place one hand on your belly, not out of hope, not yet, just to remind yourself this is the place where future comes from. Whether or not it arrives, it has been honored. Outside, the wind shifts. The frangipani blossoms fall silently onto the courtyard tiles. The moon watches. You do not cry. You do not speak. You sleep with one eye open just enough to remember that even rest is a performance. By morning, the blossom by your ear has browned, curled inward like a whisper that no longer wants to be spoken. You pluck it from your hair without ceremony and drop it into the fire pit, watching it shrivel into nothing as the smoke rises. That, too, is part of the ritual. Letting go, not the dramatic kind, not the tearful kind, but the daily, steady shedding of the previous day's shadow. Married women in the Khmer Empire don't carry grief like a banner. They fold it, quietly, and tuck it beneath their waistband, between herbs and prayers, where no one can reach it but them. Your fingers move instinctively to that place now, the narrow crease of cloth bound tightly around your waist. It isn't just a belt, it's a vessel, a private world stitched into pleats and tucked beneath modesty. You loosen it gently. Check the tiny bundle of offerings tied into a faded square of silk, crushed areca nut, dried basil, a chip of stone from the temple floor, a sliver of beeswax carved with a spiral. Each one holds a promise, or a warning. Some were gifts, others were made by your own hand. During hours no one watched. One charm is blackened at the edge. It burned once when you passed too close to the hearth. You didn't throw it away. You took it as a sign that it had absorbed something meant for you. You kept it close ever since. There's a folded paper inside, too oily now, smudged, nearly illegible. But you remember the words, a charm against envy. You wrote it the day your sister-in-law accused you of hoarding tamarind. A petty thing, really. But you saw the look in her eyes. Envy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just silence with too many teeth. That day, you mixed ink from soot and boiled leaves and scribbled the words while your children napped. You folded it 7 times, breathed onto it, and tucked it where it now rests. And every day since, you've carried it not out of fear, but out of awareness. Because being a wife in this world means being watched, not just by people, by forces, by histories, by whatever wakes when your shadow stretches too far across the doorway. You retie the sash carefully, aligning the fold so that the charm sits just to the left of your navel. That's the power point, the old women say, the place where your womb listens, the place where your intuition hums. If you misalign it, your body may forget how to protect itself. You adjust it again, just to be sure. Then you add a sprig of holy basil, still dewy from the garden, and a bead of salt wrapped in cotton, protection against lies. You smile faintly. You need that more than ever. Today you'll visit the market, and that requires armor of a different sort. Markets are not just for trading goods. They're arenas of glances and murmurs, of comparisons and veiled insults, of subtle power shifting from one wife's basket to another's. You pack your coins, your folded palm leaf list, and adjust your scarf to cover your neck but not your collarbone. A little skin is allowed, but not too much. The sun blesses modesty, they say, but the market blesses calculation. Before you leave, you pass by the house shrine and add a new offering, a sliver of mango, a spoonful of rice, and a coin pressed into turmeric paste. You whisper, "May my steps be watched, but not measured." A small spell, one your cousin taught you in secret, usually used before festivals. You use it for errands, because why not every interaction outside the home can shift your standing inside it? On your way, you pass women doing the same, each with her own gait, her own bundle, her own protections. One wears a necklace with cloves strung through copper wire. That's a spell against slander. Another wears 3 silver rings on her left hand, an old merchant's charm for negotiation. You nod politely to each, careful not to stare too long at any one item. In this world, noticing is a form of theft. If you gaze too long at another woman's charm, its power might drain. She might think you're trying to take it, so you look, then look away, just enough to show respect, just enough to remain unthreatening. At the market, the noises rise, sharp voices, laughter like snapping twigs, the call of fruit sellers promising sweetness. You move through it all with practiced ease, exchanging goods and coin, but also signals. A slightly raised eyebrow at the fishmonger tells him you're not fooled by yesterday's catch. A bow of the head toward the widow selling woven mats reminds her that you haven't forgotten her husband's funeral rites. She slips you an extra thread of beetle vine in thanks. You tuck it behind your ear. That, too, is a charm. Not every gift has to be wrapped in cloth and legend. Some are just acknowledgments, moments of grace. On your way home, a child brushes against you, laughing, holding a string of flowers. You freeze for a moment. If she was cursed or ill, that touch could pass something to you. But then you see the yellow threads on her wrist, protection knots tied during the last festival. You relax. Still, you pause beneath a tamarind tree and whisper a cleansing verse just in case. It costs nothing. It prevents everything. Back home, you empty your basket, placing each item with care. Dried fish to the left, mangoes to the cool corner, ginger root wrapped in cloth and stored beside the hearth. You rub a bit of ash into your palms and wash with lime water before stepping back inside. The sash at your waist still hums softly. The charms have not moved. That's a good sign. You sit for a moment in the doorway, letting the late afternoon light settle across your lap. You watch dust swirl in the air, golden, slow, like memory in motion. You think about how many women carried charms like yours. Some were queens, some were servants, all of them navigating this empire with offerings stitched into their clothes, protection folded beneath their duties. Scholars rarely write about this part. They document trade, architecture, conquests. But you wonder what held the empire together more: sandstone or salt bundles, edicts or quiet prayers. You hear your daughter behind you, humming a song half remembered from temple days. She leans against your shoulder, small fingers tugging at the edge of your scarf. You feel her searching. You know what for. You loosen the sash, just slightly, and let her peek at the bundle beneath. Her eyes widen. She smiles. "What's that one for?" she whispers. You pause, then answer. "This one listens when I can't speak." She nods, satisfied. Children understand magic better than adults. They don't need explanations, just presence. She runs off, barefoot, trailing laughter and dust. You retie the sash. The charm sits warm now, as if it heard her question and answered in its own way. You stand. The sun is low. The market is far behind. But you are still wrapped in layers of meaning. And you know tomorrow, you'll add another charm. Not because you're afraid, but because you are a woman. And that is what women here do. That night, while the house quiets and the coals settle into their slow, red breathing, your own body gives its quiet signal the blood has come. You feel it not as pain, but as gravity, as a tide pulling everything inward. Deeper, you move slowly to the water jar, dip a finger in, and mark your left ankle. A small gesture, invisible to others, but sharp in its certainty. The sacred red days have arrived. In the Khmer Empire, this is not a curse nor a shame. It is a shift in state, a private crossing from one realm into another. But still, there are rules. You are no longer to prepare offerings, no longer to step near the spirit posts. You must avoid the alms bowl, the family altar, the head of the bed. Even your own shadow must not touch the shrine until the 5th day. The older women say it's to keep the balance. The younger ones say nothing at all. You've never argued. You just obey. You change your sarong. The one you wear during this time is darker, dyed with indigo and pomegranate peel colors that mute your presence. You do not wear gold during this week. You remove the earrings, the bangles. Even your wedding ring is slid from your hand and placed into a shallow bowl of salt water to purify. Jewelry during blood days is said to lose its energy, to draw too much attention. And attention, now, is dangerous. You become invisible by design, a walking hush. You light a single stick of sandalwood incense, not to offer, but to mark time. You place it outside the sleeping quarters, not inside. You lay out a separate mat for yourself, away from your husband, near the wall where the wind never reaches. You do not sleep in the same bed. He doesn't ask why. He knows. He knows that if he touches you during these days, the balance of the house may tilt, not because of you, but because of what moves through you. And no man wants to wake something ancient and nameless just to prove his desire. Your daughter, still young, doesn't yet understand, but she watches. She notices the absence of sound when you walk, the way you cover your hair, the way you eat with your back half turned from the doorway. She notices you don't touch the children's heads or bless their meals during these days. You've explained none of it, but she's learning, just like you did. Ritual is not taught, it is absorbed. You drink warm tamarind water and chew softened banana flowers, both meant to ease cramping and keep the blood pure. You avoid sour things and anything too hot. Your mother once said that bitter melon during this time confuses the womb. You're not sure if it's true, but the caution has rooted in your gut. You obey its shape. You don't cross the threshold of the temple room, not even to sweep, because during these days, your energy is too strong, too raw. You could disturb the gods. You could unbalance the house spirits. You could bring misfortune. But in this restriction, there is also space. For 5 days, you are excused from certain tasks. You do not light the morning fire. You do not prepare the monk's offerings. You do not press the family's clothes or fold the incense paper. Others do it, quietly. No one complains. No one jokes. Because this, too, is part of the architecture. You are both present and not. A moving absence. A soft wall between realms. There is power in that. Some say women during menstruation carry too much heat, that they must not touch the jars, or the rice baskets, lest the stored grains spoil. You've seen women carry their own bowls to the edge of the compound, to eat alone beneath the trees. You've done the same, once or twice, when the older aunts were visiting. You didn't mind. The wind was cooler out there, the birds louder. You could breathe without performing. Still, not all believe the same. In the northern provinces, some households allow women to perform daily offerings regardless. They say the blood is cleansing, not corrupting. Scholars write about this contradiction with fascination, charting regions and comparing rituals. But to you, it just means the gods are watching differently in different places. You respect that. You don't question it. You follow your region's rhythm. That's what keeps you safe. On the 3rd day, you dream of water. Deep, still water with lotus leaves floating on the surface, and a current beneath that wants to pull. When you wake, you know what it means. You are releasing, not just blood, not just matter, but memory, worry, residue of the last moon. You rise before anyone else and bathe, not in the usual way, not in perfumed water. This time you use only salt and ground turmeric. You scrub your arms and legs, your neck, the inside of your elbows. You rinse twice, never looking directly into the water jar. That's important. You do not want to see what leaves you. After the bath, you wear white, a plain wrap. No embellishments. You tie your hair back tightly. You look like a girl again, but you are not. You're someone returning, someone re-entering. By the 5th day, the rules begin to lift, one by one. You light incense again, just one stick, in the corner near the window, not near the shrine. You help prepare breakfast, but do not taste it. You sweep, but avoid the altar room. That comes on the 6th day. Re-entry must be gradual. The spirits must not be startled by your return. And on the 7th day, you return fully. You open the shrine room at dawn and lay down a new cloth on the altar, white with lotus embroidery, stitched by your mother. You place a small bowl of rice, a spoonful of coconut cream, and a slice of jackfruit. You light 2 sticks of incense, not one. You bow deeply, pressing your forehead to the mat, and you whisper, "I am here again." That is all. That is enough. Your husband watches from the doorway, says nothing, but his gaze softens. The children sense it too. The air changes. The balance restores. The house exhales. You retie your sash, slip your gold ring back onto your finger, arrange your hair so the coil rests at the nape of your neck, and you smile. Not because the ritual is over, but because it worked. The morning sun filters through the slatted wall, weaving pale lines of light across your folded hands, as you prepare the monthly offering, a ritual meal not for the gods, but for your marriage. Because weddings in the Khmer Empire don't end with the ceremony, the music, or the procession of blessings. They repeat, quietly, monthly, in small gestures that say we're still bound, we still remember, we still renew. You rise early today, before even the rice has started to hiss in the pot, and begin shaping banana leaves into cups small, folded boats to carry offerings of memory. You steam glutinous rice with coconut milk and mung beans. Press it into layered shapes and slice it with a dull, respectful blade. Everything must be softened. Sharp edges offend during renewal rituals. Even the sweetness must be gentle. Your husband doesn't ask why you're doing it. He doesn't need to. He knows. He expects it. It's the 12th cycle since the last full moon after your anniversary, the day considered most favorable for marital blessings. On this day, the wife prepares a meal that mimics their wedding dishes, scaled down but symbolically rich, a bit of roasted fish to echo abundance, tamarind broth to remind of harmony, both the sour and the sweet, fried lotus root to represent fertility. But the most important part is not the food itself, it's the act of giving it. The tray is laid not at the table, but on the sleeping mat, between husband and wife, a shared meal eaten in quiet, with only one phrase exchanged. Have you eaten? Yes. It's not just politeness, it's a vow repeated. You remember your first one. You had cried that day, not out of sadness, but out of the immense, suffocating pressure of performing something you had never been taught, but were expected to know instinctively. Your mother had whispered from the shadows of the kitchen, but she never stepped forward. This wasn't her ritual to guide. It was yours. You had served the fish upside down, forgotten the lotus tea. He hadn't said anything, but his mother did days later, in a tone so casual you almost missed the sting. You haven't forgotten since now you move with ease. The tray's arranged with perfect symmetry. You use a cloth embroidered with a naga, the same pattern you wove last season. You remember that moment clearly. You had stitched it as a quiet apology after an argument you both never acknowledged. Because in your world, atonement doesn't arrive in words. It arrives in arrangements, in how the rice is shaped, in where the chopsticks are placed, in whether you eat together or in silence. Before the meal, you prepare the space. You sweep the floor with fresh palm leaves dipped in jasmine water. You open the window just wide enough to let in morning light, but not the eyes of neighbors. This is a private ritual, but never secret. Everyone knows it happens. Everyone hears the silence. That's how they know it's working. You light incense, not temple incense, but home incense, rolled with cinnamon and dried husk. It burns slower and doesn't offend the spirits who do not belong to your marriage. You bow, not to a statue, but to the air, to the shared space, to the breath between two people who are bound by custom more than desire, but who still choose, each day, to stay. You sit. He enters. His hands are washed. His expression neutral. That's a good sign. A bad sign would be him already dressed for the fields, or eating something from the kitchen. That would mean he'd forgotten. That would mean the ritual is broken. But today, he remembers. He sits opposite you, cross-legged, with the easy stiffness of someone pretending not to be superstitious. He doesn't look at the food first. He looks at the way your scarf is folded. That tells him everything. You pour the tea, right hand only, never left. The left hand invites disfavor. You use a clay cup with a small crack along the rim, not a flaw, but a reminder. Perfection is dangerous. It attracts attention. This small imperfection keeps the ritual grounded, real. You both sip. The silence is warm, heavy. The incense swirls upward. The rice steams softly. You serve him the first bite. He accepts. You don't eat until he finishes 3 spoonfuls. That's the rule. And not a rule written anywhere, but one you learn from watching, from listening to what the older women didn't say. He finishes. You eat, slowly, intentionally, each mouthful a link in a chain. You don't speak. There's nothing to say. Everything has already been said last month, the month before, in gestures, in silences, in the way the floor was swept. in the way your eyes met beneath the frangipani tree when the children were too loud. After the meal, you collect the dishes in a specific order: bowl, spoon, cup, tray. You do not stack them. Stacking suggests layering one person's needs atop another. Instead, they are carried individually, washed in separate bowls, dried with separate cloths, then stored together. This, too, is symbolic. Separate, but united. You take a portion of what was made just a small spoon of rice, a leaf of lotus, a curl of dried fish, and offer it to the ancestors, not because they were part of your marriage, but because they are the root of all marriages. Their unions birthed yours. Their choices echo in your arguments. Their silences whisper in your laughter. You place the food on the family altar, light a single candle, and bow 3 times. Later, when the house quiets again and the incense has turned to ash, you fold the cloth used in the ritual and tuck it into a basket that holds only married things. The scarf you wore at your wedding, the silver pin gifted to you by his aunt, the first bracelet your son tugged off your wrist. All of it hums with residue. You touch each one gently, not to remember, but to remain. It's curious how the empire has such grandeur stone temples, armies, royal edicts, and yet here, in your corner of the world, everything that truly holds power is soft. A cloth, a meal, a gaze. You think of the other women in your village, your province, your empire, all kneeling on mats this morning, all performing the same ritual in their own way, maybe with different dishes, maybe with different husbands, maybe with no husbands at all, but still observing, still stitching the empire together not with politics, but with routine. Historians rarely mention this meal. They speak of court ceremonies and royal feasts, but not this, not the monthly re-wedding of ordinary women. But, you know, and they know, that without it, the household phrase, without it, marriage becomes obligation, not offering. Without it, something sacred collapses into something silent, and you are not ready to let silence win. So you light one last stick of incense before the sun reaches its peak. You press your hands together and close your eyes, and you whisper, not to a god, not to your husband, not even to yourself, but to the ritual itself. I see you. I am still here. I am still doing it right. The room darkens early tonight, not from the sun setting, but from the rain approaching, a slow, humming pressure that settles into the wooden beams and makes the mats curl at the edges. You sense it before it begins, that strange hush in the air. You walk across the floor barefoot, your steps careful, slow, as if not to disturb the rhythm of the weather. The house feels tight with anticipation. It's the night of the bed ceremony again, the renewal not of marriage, but of conjugal space, a ritual older than anyone can name, older than the temples themselves, passed through bodies, not books. You open the low cabinet where the incense is kept, run your fingers across the different bundles, some meant for worship, some for purification. But tonight, you choose the one tied in red string, the blend meant specifically for marital union. It smells of burnt clove, dried hibiscus, and sandalwood. The bed must be prepared carefully. This is not simply tidying, it is arrangement. First, you change the sheets, not because they are dirty, but because repetition is dangerous. Even cleanliness, if unchanged, becomes invisible. You burn a pinch of rice in the corner of the room, the smoke curling up in lazy spirals. That smoke must touch all 4 corners. Only then is the space considered sealed. You place a sprig of lemongrass under the pillow. That keeps away bad dreams, or at least interrupts them. If you're too tired for dreams tonight, it still counts. You're not preparing for fantasy, you're preparing for peace. And peace, in this house, often begins with the bed. You smooth the surface with both palms, not lifting your hands, not pausing. You whisper the phrase as you do, let no old quarrel remain between these sheets. It's not scripture, it's survival. You place 2 bowls at the foot of the bed, one with flower water, one with a few grains of salt and tamarind. Salt to absorb leftover anger, tamarind to sweeten whatever comes next. You don't place these bowls close together. They must remain a hand's width apart, symbolic distance, acknowledgement that even closeness needs breath. Then the candles. You light 3, not 2. 2 is for mourning, 3 is for balance. 1 for him, 1 for you, 1 for what lives between you, desire, memory, regret, duty. It changes shape, but it is always present. The flames flicker just slightly as you set them down, and you pause to make sure none of them lean. A leaning flame is a bad sign. It means someone is keeping a secret. You straighten them. You hope it's enough. He enters without a word, towel around his shoulders, the smell of soap still clinging to his skin. He sees the room. He knows. This night isn't spontaneous. It's expected, scheduled, and that doesn't make it less real. In fact, it might make it more, because what is sacred in your world is not passion, it's consistency. You greet him with a quiet nod. He returns it. That's enough. You turn away. Give him space. He dries his feet by the fire and murmurs something about the rain. You agree without looking. You both understand. The rain is an old witness. He lies down first. That's custom. You enter after adjusting the fold of your sarong so it doesn't brush the floor. You don't want to carry dust into the bed. The blanket is pulled halfway up. That's your invitation. You lie beside him, hands tucked beneath the edge, not touching. There's a saying, let the night begin in stillness, not in heat. You believe in that. And so, you lie there. The rain begins. A slow tapping at first, like fingers drumming on a hollow drum, then faster, heavier. It drowns the noise of insects, even of thought. It becomes its own kind of curtain. You stare at the ceiling and think about the women before you. Your mother, her mother, all of them smoothing sheets, lighting candles, hoping their efforts would bring peace into the bed, not conflict. You once thought all this was to please him. Now you know better. It's to protect you. Stillness becomes breath. Breath becomes closeness. A shared warmth, not always romantic, but always necessary, even when you don't speak. The bed ceremony draws a line through the chaos of daily life. It says here, at least, we try. You turn slightly, your knee grazing his leg. It's not a request. It's a gesture. He responds by pulling the blanket higher, wrapping both of you. That's his answer. No words needed. Later, when the candles have burned down halfway, and the rain thins into a soft murmur, you slip out of bed, careful not to wake him. You take the bowls from the foot of the bed and pour the contents outside, not just disposal release. You do not pour them in the garden. That would trap memory in the soil. You pour them near the old tamarind tree, which is said to hold no grudges. You whisper, let this night rest. Back inside, you wash your hands with the rice water and light one last stick of incense, not for the gods, but for the room itself, for the air you've shared, for the bodies that touched without violence. You wave the smoke over the pillows, over your chest, and finally over your bare feet. That closes the ritual. You sit on the floor for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then you lie back down, curling toward his sleeping form, not to hold, but to mirror. The body remembers ritual, even in sleep. The next morning, you'll clean everything again. The sheets will be washed, the bowls scrubbed, the candle stubs buried. Nothing of the night will remain visible, and yet everything will have shifted slightly, not in dramatic ways, just in the way he hands you the tea, in the way your eyes meet before breakfast, in the fact that the roof didn't leak, even in heavy rain. Small things, but that's how the empire is held together, not by proclamations, by sheets and firelight, by the women who prepare the bed over and over without praise. And though no one speaks of it openly, everyone knows she who prepares the bed holds the power, not because she decides, but because she endures, because she remembers, because in a world that expects her silence, she responds not with protest, but with ceremony. And ceremony is stronger than defiance. It outlasts storms. It outlives kings. It softens men. It sanctifies the ordinary. You drift into sleep with that thought in your chest. Not pride, just knowing, and knowing is enough. By the time the seventh rooster cry ripples across the compound and fades into the rustling palms, you're already awake, sitting beside the hearth, grinding dried petals into dust between your palms. It's not morning yet, not truly, but the day of reckoning has begun. She arrived yesterday, not a servant, not a visitor, a new wife, or at least a new woman. You saw her from across the rice fields, walking behind your husband as he carried a bundle of offerings, too elaborate for a casual guest. She wore pink silk, not crimson, not yellow, pink, a color so soft, so dangerous, the color of promise. She didn't look at you, but she didn't need to. You already knew what she was. The other women pretend not to notice, but their glances tell the truth. No one speaks of it directly, not yet. But the house feels different. The wind skips. The fire doesn't catch on the first try. Even the dogs bark more often. Your body feels it before your mind does. Something has shifted. And so you begin, not with confrontation, not with anger, but with ritual. Because in the Khmer Empire, jealousy is not a weakness, it's a ceremony. You take a square of white cloth from the basket beneath your altar, one you saved for this very purpose. Not that you ever hoped to use it, but every wife knows, one day, she might need to mourn the version of her marriage she was promised. You place the cloth on your lap, sprinkle salt across it in a spiral, and begin folding. Inward, clockwise, tight. Each fold a breath you do not exhale. Each fold a name you do not say. You light a thin coil of incense, not the kind used for blessing, but the bitter one. Made from wormwood and dried papaya skin, it smells sharp, cutting. You wave it over the cloth 3 times and whisper the old phrase, "I will not speak this wound aloud." The scent fills the room, drives away insects, clears space. You set the cloth aside to rest. It must sleep under your pillow for 3 nights. On the 4th, it will be buried under a tree with yellow flowers. If it blooms within a week, you will be the favored wife again. If it wilts well, then you begin another ritual. Afterward, you prepare the meal. Not for her, not yet, but for him. A test. You grind galangal and turmeric. Shape the rice into coins. Fry the fish with tamarind just the way he likes. You add sugar not to sweeten, but to remind. Food is the only language men never misinterpret. You arrange the tray beautifully, but without effort. That is key. It must appear effortless, too perfect, and it reeks of desperation, too plain, and it concedes defeat. When he arrives, you greet him with a bow deeper than usual, but slower. A bow that says, "I see you. I see her. I am still here." He does not meet your eyes. That's expected. He sits, eats, compliments the seasoning, not the dish. That's an insult, but a subtle one. You smile, thank him. You do not eat with him. You wait until he leaves. Then you burn the leftover rice. That's not waste. That's spell work. Ash from jealous meals should never be eaten. It breeds bitterness. You hear her laughter that afternoon. High-pitched, practiced. She laughs at the way a child would laugh when it doesn't know what laughter is for. You're washing linens by the well and pause, just for a moment. You don't look toward the sound. You stir the water counterclockwise, just once, then rinse your hands. That sound hers isn't real yet, but it will be, unless you act. That night, you retrieve the carved doll from its box, made of jackfruit wood, painted with ochre, smoothed by years of careful touching. Every married woman has one. Some use them, some pretend they don't. You sit before the hearth, press your thumb to the doll's heart, and whisper her name. You don't know it, so you call her the one who follows me. You press your breath into the doll's mouth, just once. Then you wrap its waist in red thread, soaked in your bath water from your last red moon. This isn't witchcraft. This is protection. This is declaration. The doll doesn't curse. It records. It remembers. You place it beneath your bed, facing east. For the next 3 days, you will feed it small offerings and 1 grain of rice, 1 tear of tamarind juice, one petal from a flower she touched. You will collect these carefully. You will not rush. In the evening, you bathe in the ashes of burned betel leaf. You do not use soap. You do not scrub. You let the bitterness cling to you like armor. You do not braid your hair. You let it hang loose. That signals mourning, not of death, of displacement. You sleep on a mat woven by your mother, not on the marriage mat. He doesn't ask why. He doesn't enter your space. He knows this part too. Your daughter watches. She mimics the way you stir the herbs, the way you fold the cloth, the way you stare at the fire with your lips pressed shut. She does not ask, but she learns. One day, she will need these rituals. You hope she never does, but you prepare her anyway, because jealousy here is not a storm, it is a slow river, and you must learn to build bridges without drowning. 3 days pass. The cloth under your pillow feels heavier each night, as if absorbing your sorrow like water into clay. You take it on the 4th day and walk to the tree. Not the old tamarind too bitter, not the mango too generous. You choose the flame tree. Its blossoms are bright, its roots tangled. You bury the cloth beside it, press the soil down with both palms, and whisper, "Take what I cannot keep." The next day, he brings you fruit, sweet orange slices arranged in a bowl. No words, just fruit. That's a peace offering. You accept, you eat one slice, you save the rest. That night, you remove the doll from under the bed, wash it in salt water, and place it back in the box. You do not need it now. For a while, at least. She stays, of course, but the air shifts. He looks at you when you speak. She doesn't laugh as loudly. You sleep in the marriage bed again. You light 3 candles instead of 2. The middle flame burns steady. You breathe. You do not win. There is no winning. But you remain. And sometimes, that is power enough. The air is thick with the scent of boiled rice and old incense when the scream comes not loud, not panicked, just sharp enough to silence the birds. You drop the bundle of folded linens you were carrying and move without thinking, barefoot across the plank floor. Your breath caught somewhere between your chest and your throat. It's her, the second wife, the younger one, curled in the corner of the sleeping room, her hands between her legs, her hair wild like sugarcane in the wind. Blood pools beneath her dark, wet. Not the color of ritual, but of loss. Your husband is nowhere. Someone fetches the elder woman. Someone else runs to the monk. You don't speak. You kneel. You hold her face in your hands. You see it in her eyes. She thought it would be joy. She thought it would be simple. And now, she bleeds. In the Khmer Empire, childbirth is not a celebration. It is a passage lined with fire and silence. And miscarriages are crossings that end before the other shore. They are not grieved in public. They are whispered into ashes. You press a cloth between her legs. You do not cry. You call for warm water, basil, charcoal, ginger. You tell her to breathe, but she already is. Too fast, too shallow. You place your hand on her forehead and say the old phrase, "Come back into your body," not because it fixes anything, but because it must be said. Later, when the blood has slowed and the elder woman has sent her away to rest in the far room, the one with no windows, you help clean. No one tells you to, but you know. The room must be purified. The spirits must not be allowed to linger. You burn dried lemongrass and wave the smoke through the beams. You sweep toward the door, never toward the walls. The blood-soaked cloth is not buried. It is burned, carefully, under the moon. If you bury it, the earth might remember her sorrow, and no one wants their child born over a grief-stained root. You stay awake that night, not to watch her, but to keep the spirits confused. That's the ritual. When a womb empties unexpectedly, it is believed to call attention from old souls, from curious ghosts, from jealous ancestors. So someone must stay awake and move through the house. You light a new fire every 2 hours. You boil water with bitter herbs. You talk to yourself in low tones, not because you need to, but to fill the air. Silence invites listening. And tonight, you do not want to be overheard. The older women arrive in the morning, silent, veiled, eyes downcast. They bring bundles of cloth, salted rice, a clay pot filled with a thick, dark liquid you do not name. They do not greet you. They go to her. They close the door, and for 2 days, no one else enters. She's not spoken to. She's not touched. She's rewrapped, reordered. Rituals you were never allowed to learn. Rituals kept for the in-between. When she returns, her face is pale, and her hair has been cut short, not as punishment, as protection. Hair holds memory. Loose strands become invitations. By cutting it, she severs the thread. She's not a wife this week. She's not a girl. She's the space between. You don't ask what they did in that room, but you know the scent of turmeric and ash. You know the color of cleansing. And when she sits across from you that evening and pours you tea, you do not refuse it. That would be cruel. You accept the cup, sip, nod, and in that small moment, you begin the ritual of welcoming her back, not as rival, not as child, but as a woman who now knows. You remember your own crossing, how your belly swelled and then did not, how your mother-in-law made you sleep on the floor for 3 days, how your sister placed burning cloves around your bed and sang that sharp little song that didn't rhyme but kept the shadows back. No one told you it was a loss. They called it a misstep, a late moon, a sorrow that passed. But you remember the ache, the hollow, the way your body became something to apologize for. You remember how long it took to love your skin again? And so, you watch her, quietly, from a distance. You prepare her meals without salt, as is the custom. You bring her warm water steeped with crushed tamarind leaves. You place a small sachet of dried jasmine under her mat. You don't say why. She doesn't ask. She simply touches your hand once, lightly, like a leaf brushing the surface of water. And that's enough. The house changes during these days. The children speak more softly. The walls seem to hold their breath. Your husband keeps to the fields longer, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps to avoid the wait. You don't know. You don't ask. You wash the floors with citron and rice wine. You mark the threshold with red chalk. You hang 3 strips of banana leaf from the doorframe. All small things, but necessary. Because when a womb empties, the home must be filled with balance again. On the 6th day, the elder woman returns. She places a small clay bowl in the center of the house and fills it with rice, water, and fire ash. This is the final act. She lights a single flame atop the mixture and whispers, "Let what left. Leave gently." You and the younger wife sit on either side of the bowl, back straight, hands open. You say nothing. You just breathe. The flame flickers once, then steadies, then fades. That is the sign. The house is clean. The passage is closed. Later, when she steps outside for the first time, you hand her a piece of fresh cloth, unbleached, undecorated, soft. She takes it, wraps it around her shoulders. Her hair is still short, still uneven, but her gaze is steady. You see yourself in it, not the you from last week, the you from long ago, before you knew that rituals are not just for blessings. They are for grief. They are the only language sorrow will listen to. That night, you place a new doll under your pillow, not the jackfruit one, a smaller one, made from straw and thread. You press your thumb to its chest and whisper no names. This one is not for memory. It is for protection. You sleep deeply for the first time in many days, and when you wake, the sky is clear, the air crisp, the floor cool beneath your feet. You light incense without shaking. You wash your face without hesitation. The doll remains warm, and outside, the younger wife sweeps the courtyard in wide, even strokes. She does not look at you, but she knows you are watching. She does not bow, but she does not walk away. And you understand. The ritual is not finished, but the silence has ended. You sweep the steps before sunrise, the broom straw crackling against the wood like a slow exhale. The dew clings to your ankles, and the sky above the tamarind trees blushes gray-blue. You've swept these same steps for years, but today your body hesitates at the threshold. Not because of her she's inside, still sleeping, her breath even, but because of the dream you had. You stood at the top of the temple staircase in the dream, dressed in wedding silk, and the crowd below was bowing. but not to you. They were bowing to your husband, and as you tried to step forward, a voice said softly behind you, "Your shadow touches his crown." You woke up shivering, unsure why it mattered. But it does. You know it does. In this empire, in this life, shadows are not just absence. They are signs. And the tallest shadow always belongs to the most sacred figure. A wife must never forget her place in the hierarchy of light. You glance toward the house and catch your reflection in the polished bronze water basin. Your hair has come loose from the knot at your nape. You retie it quickly, then you bow not to the water, but to the space above it, to the idea of order, of balance, of what must never be crossed. In Khmer tradition, a woman must never let her head rise higher than her husband's, especially not in shared spaces. It's not merely symbolic. It's believed that the heavens watch such movements, and should a wife's shadow fall across her husband's seated figure, misfortune could follow, crops failing, fevers arriving, dreams curdling into sickness. You used to roll your eyes at these things. As a girl, you once passed your father while he napped and forgot to lower your gaze. That evening, the rice pot cracked over the fire, and your mother didn't speak to you for 3 days. After marriage, you learned better. You learned that the body is not yours to move freely. It must bend at thresholds. It must kneel in kitchens. It must pause at doorways. And when your husband sits, even if he's just tying his sandals, you step back, make a soft sound with your foot so he knows you're there, and only move forward when invited. Not every woman obeys these gestures. Some newer wives, especially from trading towns, question them. They say, "Why must I be beneath a man who cannot even read?" But their elders always answer with the same sentence, "Because the gods can." You remember when one such woman stood to speak during a temple feast, while her husband still chewed his food. The next week, her youngest child developed a fever that would not break. The monks blamed spirits. The older women knew better. She had stepped over her husband's name. In this world, respect is mapped in physical space: who sits, who stands, who walks first. And so, today, you move through the house like a shadow that knows where it belongs. You keep your eyes low, your steps soft, your arms folded respectfully when passing behind your husband. He does not notice, or perhaps he does, but never says. That's the way of things. His attention is for the larger matters: the price of dried fish, the state of the oxen. Yours is for the unspoken currents that keep the roof from falling, and you accept that. Until the moment your daughter skips past him in the garden, laughing, her head higher than his, her arms outstretched like a dancer. She does not bow. She does not stop, and your breath catches like a splinter. He says nothing, but you see the flicker in his brow, the slight pause in his hand as he sharpens the blade for the coconut husk. A thread has been pulled, however small. You call her inside with a tone that pretends to be gentle. She comes, dragging her feet. You kneel before her and brush the dust from her ankles. You say when you pass your father, you lower your head. You make yourself light. You don't cross the sun between him and the sky. She frowns. She says, "But I'm taller now." And the honesty of that shakes something loose in your chest. You don't argue. Instead, you light incense. You say, "Come help me with the altar." She watches you bow, watches how you never let your knees point toward the shrine, how your fingers touch the offering tray with the back of your hand, never the palm. She imitates poorly. You correct her, but gently. You say, when your head is low, your heart is heard. That's what your aunt told you once. The same aunt who never married, who lived with fire in her eyes and salt in her voice. You still hear her laugh sometimes in your dreams. She bowed to no one, and no one mourned her when she died. There's power in following the rituals, not because they are fair, but because they protect you. They smooth your path. They make your presence less threatening, and that, in this world, is often safer than being seen. You've walked behind your husband for years, to the river, to the temple, to the cremation ground, not because you cannot lead, but because leading draws heat. And you know how heat behaves in this house, how quickly it turns to blame. Your husband, to his credit, has never scolded you for stepping too close. He has never raised his voice over your position in space, but he does pause. Sometimes, when you speak too soon, he clears his throat when you laugh a little louder than expected. And you understand that this, too, is the ritual, not punishment. Just the way things are smoothed, adjusted, contained. Still, you wonder, if one day you step forward just once while he knelt to pray, would the sky collapse? Would the spirits recoil? Or would nothing happen at all? Except your own shame, thick in your throat like spoiled milk. You don't test it, you just wonder. In the evening, you climb the steps after he's already inside. You pause at the threshold, wait for his back to turn. Only then do you enter. Your daughter watches, mimics. You nod. You say nothing. But tomorrow, when you bathe, you'll wash your feet with a little extra salt. You'll sprinkle rice ash at the door, just in case your shadow stretched too far today. Because here, in the quiet corners of a marriage no one else sees, reverence is the only shield. And so you bow not just to your husband, but to the air around him, to the roles, to the weight of being the one who always steps second, and you do it not because you believe he is higher, but because the gods might. The temple bells chime once, faint and distant, echoing through the haze of mid-morning heat. Though you are nowhere near the temple grounds, you pause, kneeling over the laundry basin, your hands deep in soap-stiffened cloth, and listen. One chime, not the usual two. That means the monks are finishing a special prayer, a naming ceremony perhaps, or the offering of a robe to a senior abbot. It doesn't matter. You won't go. You rarely do. Married women like you, especially those beyond childbearing years, do not belong in the innermost sanctums of places like Angkor Wat. You are not forbidden. You are simply unnecessary. The shrine walls, carved with dancers and devatas, are not meant for you. They honor beauty, youth, purity, not laundry-stained fingernails and calloused feet. You wring out the fabric and hang it, cloth after cloth, letting them form a curtain between you and the outside world. The sun burns above, indifferent. Still, the temple watches, not as a place, but as a presence. You feel it in the way you sweep the threshold, in how you speak on holy days, in how you cover your head during storms. You live as if being watched, because in truth, you are. Every action in the home, every motion of your fingers, every word you say around food or fire or blood, is shaped by a sacred geography whose center you are not allowed to touch. That's the paradox. You orbit something that controls your life, but you never truly enter it. The temple is both far away and inside you. Today is a moon day, not the black moon, not the full, a waning, a day for restraint, for observation. That means no sharp tools, no loud singing, no eating after sunset. You already knew this before your husband reminded you, before he finished his meal and gestured toward the temple road, saying, "Today they will chant for our ancestors. You should light incense." You nodded. Of course. You always do. You climbed the ladder to the small house shrine, the one near the eastern wall, shaded by bamboo. It isn't grand. It's barely a meter wide, with clay statues chipped at the base and a roof patched with palm leaf. But it matters. You place a pinch of rice, a sliver of coconut, and a small roll of betel nut. Then you light the incense, using the same matchbox you've used for years, worn soft and almost empty. The flame flutters once, catches, and steadies. You bow 3 times, forehead to mat, and whisper not words you fully understand, but sounds passed down through repetition. They are syllables of rhythm, not thought. You don't question what they mean. You trust they mean what they must. The smoke coils upward, and with it your breath. This is your temple now. This little box, this sliver of sky between the shrine's roof and the wall. You're not expected to step beyond it. You're not pure enough, not young enough, not empty enough. Only virgins and old men may touch the heart of the great temple. You are too full of life, too soaked in cooking oil, too stained by childbirth, too tangled in longing. The temple does not want your footsteps echoing in its halls, but it wants your obedience. So, you give it. Even your clothing responds. on holy days. You wear white, not because it suits you, but because white is the color of surrender. It says you're clean. It says you know your place. Today, you wrap the plain cotton scarf over your shoulder, cover your collarbone, tie your hair back tightly so no strand flies loose to catch on the wind. The gods don't like disorder. Neither do the old women who pass by your gate and nod when they see you dressed properly. Nod again when they see the smoke rising from your offering. They don't speak, but you feel their judgment easing, like heat lifting from stone. You remember the last time you dared enter the temple's outer gate during a full moon? It was years ago. You were younger, newly married, swollen with your second pregnancy. You'd worn your best silk and knelt outside the library pavilion, not even daring to approach the sanctum. Still, a monk noticed. He said nothing cruel, just looked, and that look hollowed you. Not disgust, not anger, just disapproval, as if you had taken a seat that wasn't yours. You never went back. That doesn't mean you stopped believing. You simply learned where belief is allowed, not inside walls, but within behavior. Your husband can enter the temple, receive blessings, recite prayers beside the saffron-clad novices. You prepare his robe before he goes. You polish his sandals. You press the edges of his cloth flat with a warm stone. That is your way of touching the temple. Through him. Through things. Through absence. Still, the temple shapes you. It tells you which days are for silence, which hours to bathe, which foods to avoid during which phases of the moon. It tells you not to touch your husband when he returns from the inner sanctum until he has cleansed. It tells you that a woman's body holds too much heat to be near sacred statues unless she has fasted. It tells you that your dreams, if they come after rice has soured, may be omens. It tells you to listen, and you do, even now. As you prepare the evening meal, you choose mung beans instead of meat. You salt the rice with care. You taste nothing. You're fasting not in hunger, but in reverence. The fast is not visible, but it radiates from you. The way you lower your gaze, the way you step more softly, the way you sing less while stirring the pot. Your daughter watches, mimics, missteps. You correct her. You say, today is a temple day, even here. Because that's the truth no one says aloud. The temple is not only there, beyond the village, wrapped in stone and mystery. It is here, in your wash basin, in the rhythm of your sweeping, in how you greet the elderly, in how you cover your head when the monk's bell rings in the distance. You are always inside it, even if you never enter its gates. Scholars debate whether women in the Angkor period had full access to religious life. Inscriptions mention devadases and female patrons. Reliefs show queens at ceremonies. But daily life, daily holiness, that belongs to wives like you, whose prayers are measured in folded napkins and dustless floors, who bless their husbands through silence, who teach their daughters not by doctrine, but by dinner. And tonight, after the offering is complete, after your husband returns and the children are asleep, you walk to the edge of the compound where the moonlight pools like milk over the earth. You stand there quietly, hands folded, not praying, not asking, just being, just reflecting, just reminding yourself you may never step past the sanctum doors, but you are still holy. You are still part of it all. You lower your head, you turn back toward the house, and as you walk, your shadow long, soft, patient follows you without question. The old women say grief has its own etiquette, that when your husband dies, you don't cry like a child or wail like the village goats. You don't tear your blouse or throw yourself at the pyre. No matter what the old stories say, you become quieter, more precise, almost ceremonial in your movements, as if each motion carries the weight of proving that yes, you were a good wife, and yes, you can carry the death without it staining the walls. And so, when your husband dies suddenly, silently, as he sharpens a knife before the morning stew, you do not scream. You do not run. You kneel beside his body, adjust the fold of his sash, close his mouth with your thumb and forefinger, and whisper the old words that no one ever taught you. Yet you've always known, go lightly, leave only what we can carry. The house, suddenly too large, too loud with quiet, begins to listen. Grief does not grant freedom. It simply changes the script. As a widow in the Khmer Empire, your days are no longer punctuated by preparing his meals or arranging the bed. Instead, they are filled with rules even more rigid than before. You must rise earlier than the roosters. Your hair must remain unadorned. No more flowers, no gold, no scented oils. You wear white, not as a sign of purity, but as a banner of departure. You are no longer attached to earthly ties, not officially, not in the way others are. And yet, everything still binds you the memory of his voice, the pressure of old rituals, the new performance of absence. You become a ghost within your own body. The first 3 days are for separation. You don't sleep on the marriage bed. You lay a mat near the back of the house, away from the altar. You eat alone with your back to the door. You don't speak unless spoken to. The children don't touch you, not because they are unkind, but because grief, like menstruation, is considered too powerful in its raw state. It disrupts the energy of the home. You wash with boiled rainwater steeped in bamboo leaves, then discard the water beyond the gate. If you pour it near the tamarind tree, the sorrow might return. If you keep it inside the walls, it will not leave at all. You tie a piece of white cloth around your wrist, blessed by the elder monk, frayed at the edge. It must remain until it falls off on its own. You do not cut it. Cutting it would cut the cord between your husband's spirit and the place he loved. And you are still the keeper of that place. For 7 days, you don't light incense in the house shrine. You offer no food. You let the gods eat silence. And each night, you sleep with one oil lamp burning beside your mat, not to keep away spirits, but to show his soul the path back, should it get lost. That's the part most outsiders never understand. Grief here is not about letting go. It is about hosting the ghost until it finds its next resting place. On the 8th day, the house must be rebalanced. The monks come with their chants, low and steady, like water flowing over stone. You lay his favorite food on a banana leaf, the sticky rice with palm sugar he asked for each market day. You place his sandals by the door, heel to toe, just as he always left them. You hang his scarf over the window ledge, not to dry, but to signal his absence. The monks burn rice and chant his name, not to call him, but to send it further. You don't cry. But when the 3rd chant ends, you taste iron on your tongue. That is your body mourning. Quietly, completely. After the monks leave, the house feels thinner, lighter, but not easier. You sweep again, this time toward the center of the house, toward where he used to sit, toward where you must now sit alone. The rules change, yes, but your work does not end. You are still expected to maintain order, to hold the house together, to remember, and memory, here, is labor. On the 13th day, you're allowed to speak his name again. You do it carefully. As you prepare Dati Chun, you say, barely above a whisper. You say it to the pot, not the air. You say it so the walls can adjust. His name is not gone. It simply echoes differently now. People begin to visit. Not many. Mostly women. Mostly those who have worn the same white you now wear. They bring bundles of rice, dried herbs, sometimes silence. They sit with you and tell stories not of his death, but of his small habits. How he always added too much salt. How he hated getting his feet wet. You laugh. Once. They smile. Then you all grow quiet again. You don't thank them. They don't expect it. This is not generosity. This is the cycle. And then comes the part you dread, the shrine offering. On the 21st day, you must step into the temple and offer a portion of his belongings to the monks. A robe, a bowl, a coin. You choose his sash, the deep indigo one with the worn edge, and fold it neatly. As you walk the path to the temple, your feet feel heavy, not from grief, but from the weight of re-entering a world you have been forbidden to touch since his passing. At the temple gate, you kneel. You press the bundle into the monk's hands. He blesses you. You bow until your forehead touches the ground. The sun burns the back of your neck. You do not move. After this offering, you return to the house. You're no longer in active mourning, but you're not free. Widowhood is not freedom. It is choreography. You must eat last at every meal. You must avoid weddings for one full cycle of the moon. You must never step over a sleeping child, lest your shadow mark them. You may not wear red. You may not touch your husband's favorite tools until the harvest ends. You may not sit in the seat he carved. You continue your days. You wash the clothes. You braid your daughter's hair. You keep the floor swept. But your voice is softer, your back straighter. You walk slower, not from weakness, but from intention. Because now, everything you do with the understanding that someone has left. And your life is the continuation of what they could no longer complete. And yet, something shifts in you. Subtle, quiet. You notice the sky more, the shadows across the threshold, the way your own hands move when you prepare rice. You find a kind of power in being unseen, in being the one who knows what it means to survive the end of something and keep moving, precisely because you were expected to. And so, you wear your white wrap for one more month than required. You continue lighting the evening lamp, even after the monks say you can stop. You keep his name in your mouth, sometimes speaking it aloud when no one is there, not for longing, not even for memory, but for rhythm, for order, for the simple, sacred truth that you are still here. You were once a wife. Now, you are the keeper of silence. And silence, in this empire, is never empty. The mornings come slower now. The light filters through the slatted wood with less urgency, as if even the sun has learned to be gentle in your presence. You no longer rush to the fire. The rice pot waits for you instead. The children rise and dress themselves. Even the chickens step around you like they know your rhythm is no longer theirs to shape. You're still useful, of course. You still sweep, still boil tea, still tie your granddaughter's sash with precision. But no one calls your name the way they used to. You have shifted into something quieter, something more permanent than labor. You're no longer wife of, you're no longer mother of. You are simply May, the elder, the one who knows. And that knowing becomes its own kind of ritual. Today, you reach for your jewelry box, the small one made from coconut shell and lacquered with red dye. You haven't opened it in weeks, maybe months. Inside is a life 2 bangles, dulled with age, a pair of ear ornaments shaped like lotus buds, a necklace of green glass beads from Champa, chipped in places, still bright. But it is the anklet that you reach for, thin, silver, once jingling, now silent. You lift it carefully and brush the dust from its edge. It was given to you not as a gift, but as a promise. You wore it the day you married. You wore it through 5 pregnancies, 2 funerals, and 3 harvests when the rice would not grow. It has touched your skin longer than any human hand ever has. You slip it over your ankle and feel, faintly, the echo of something long buried, something like readiness. You rise and walk slowly to the mirror, not to admire, but to remember. Your reflection startles you less these days. The woman staring back wears the same face, but softer, loosened. The lines around your eyes no longer seem like failures. They are thresholds. You lift your chin and fasten the necklace, not for beauty, for truth. Each bead carries a name, a moment, a story no one else knows. You remember the bead that chipped when you dropped your son during his first bath. He wasn't hurt, but you cried for hours. You remember the one you touched the night your husband came home with someone else's scent on his skin. You remember the last bead, added during the last full moon before his death, a silent offering, a question never answered. These pieces are not decoration. They are history. Women in your world don't write with ink. They write with metal, with thread, with silence. You have worn your whole life around your neck, on your wrists, on your ankles. You have spoken with color and clasp and repetition. No scholar records these sentences, but you know. You always knew. When the younger women come to you now, asking what they should wear to their husband's father's funeral, or what color is safest to wear to a birth after a miscarriage, you do not answer with rules. You open the box. You show them. You say, this one will hold your sorrow without letting it leak, or wear this if you want her to believe you are unafraid. They listen, even when they pretend not to. They watch your hands more than your mouth, and your hands do not lie. They have placed too many offerings on too many altars to forget what is sacred. This afternoon, one of the neighbors comes with her daughter. The girl is young, newly married, eyes still full of questions she cannot yet ask. Her mother bows low, brings rice wrapped in lotus leaves, says her daughter has had 3 restless nights, full of shadow dreams and saltwater crying. No illness, no fever, just fear. The kind that settles in a woman's stomach when the shape of her new life does not match the stories she was told. You don't speak immediately. You pour hot water over dried pandan and ginger root. You let the steam rise between you, thick and fragrant. Then you take the girl's hands and place them palm up. You press your thumbs into the center of each, gently, as if you are kneading memory itself. She flinches slightly. You nod. You understand. This is not possession. This is pressure. The weight of becoming. You rise and walk to your box. You return with a bangle plain brass. Not fancy, not flashy. You slide it onto her wrist. It fits perfectly. You say, "Wear this for 7 days. Do not speak of your dreams during that time. Let them dissolve on their own." She nods. Her mother bows again. You sip your tea and watch them go. After they leave, you light a single stick of incense and place it near your jewelry box. Not for worship, for memory. You're not preparing to die. Not yet. But you're preparing to be remembered. And that, too, is a ritual. You sit near the open doorway, where the light falls in rectangles across the floor. You stretch your legs, admire the glint of the anklet in the dust. You feel no need to hide it anymore. You have earned it. You wonder how many other women still carry their jewelry in silence. How many necklaces tell stories that were never spoken. You wonder if, when you're gone, someone will open your box and understand what each piece meant. You wonder if they'll place them on your body before the cremation, or if they'll keep them for themselves, wearing your courage like an heirloom. It's a strange comfort that your life might continue through ornaments, that your loyalty, your strength, your rituals might live on in a bracelet worn by someone who doesn't even know your full name. That's what the Empire never carved into stone. Not kings, not generals, but women who stitched eternity into earrings and wore their prayers on their wrists. As the sun dips behind the trees and the wind picks up slightly, you remove the anklet, carefully, respectfully. You place it back in the box, not because the day has ended, but because you want to remember that you chose to wear it, not out of duty, but out of decision. You close the lid, you press your palm to the surface once, and you smile not a wide smile, not a young one, but one that says, "I was here, I am still here, and I will remain, even when I no longer open this box." The sky is heavier now, as if dusk has arrived too early and intends to stay. You move through your home as you always have, but the weight in your limbs is not exhaustion, it's preparation. You no longer think of your life in weeks or months. You think in seasons, in rhythms of rain and rice, in the number of times you'll still be asked to tie a girl's hair before a ceremony, or whisper over a bowl of spoiled broth to tell whether the sickness will pass. You're not dying, not quite, but your body has begun its retreat, and you recognize it for what it is, the first steps toward an ending that doesn't need an announcement. And so, your rituals multiply, not out of superstition, but out of intention. You wake earlier, sweep longer, offer more water to the trees. You speak less, but mean every word. You eat slowly, not because you are weak, but because every grain of rice now tastes like something you will miss. You begin to mark the corners of the house with salt, 1 pinch, beneath each supporting beam. You do not explain to the others. If they notice, they say nothing, but you see the way they step more gently now. The way your daughter-in-law avoids placing her back to you when she kneels. The way your grandson stops asking why the meals come a little later. They feel it, even if they do not understand. You are preparing to leave, not by running, but by softening, like wax melting from the edges inward. You wear white now, not out of mourning, but out of clarity. The bright patterns and golden threads that once declared your place in the house no longer feel necessary. You fold them carefully, wrap them in banana leaves, and tie them with red thread. You leave them in a lacquered basket at the foot of your sleeping mat. You've told your granddaughter which pieces are for her, which are for the shrine, and which must never be worn again. She nodded solemnly, then cried in the garden. You did not comfort her. Instead, you placed a single marigold blossom behind her ear the next morning. She smiled. That was enough. Each evening now, you light 2 lamps, one for the house, one for the spirits. The second is smaller, older, a clay dish cracked at the rim but still capable of holding flame. You place it by the eastern window, the one where the wind slips through with the scent of dry grass and frangipani. You do not chant. You do not ask for anything. You simply sit beside it and breathe. Sometimes, when the wind shifts, you think you hear his footsteps again, the way he used to clear his throat before entering the room. You do not look up. You do not speak his name. Not because you fear he isn't there, but because you know he is. Your body changes too. The aches settle deeper, the nights stretch longer, but there's no panic in this. You feel no betrayal in your bones growing slow, your hands stiffening around the pestle, your breath catching when you kneel too quickly. This is not punishment. This is ritual. Even your dying, when it comes, will be done properly. No dramatic collapse, no sorrowful clinging, just the gentle completion of steps, the turning of the final page. You write nothing down. There's no need. What matters has already been passed, folded into meals, sewn into hymns, whispered beside cradles. When the time comes, they will know which way to carry you, which herbs to burn, which song to sing into the smoke. You've taught them without telling them, and they've learned, not through instruction, but through repetition, through watching the way you close a jar, or pause before stepping into the room with the altar, or how you never sleep facing the door. Still, you prepare. You set aside the cloth you wish to be wrapped in undyed cotton, softened from years of washing, still carrying the scent of rice husk and sandalwood. You fold it carefully, place a single jasmine petal inside, not for fragrance, for memory. You tell your daughter-in-law, when I wear this, do not cry over me. Boil tamarind, sweep the floor, light the lamp. I will follow the scent. She says she understands. Her voice shakes. You believe her anyway. You spend more time in the garden now, not working, just watching. The papaya trees lean heavier each season. The banana fronds tear more easily in the wind. The chickens scratch slower. Everything around you seems to echo your pace, as if the world is adjusting itself to your final rituals. You no longer chase the children when they run too close to the fire. You no longer warn them about the snakes beneath the bamboo roots. You simply watch, not from detachment, from peace. One afternoon, you walk to the old tamarind tree alone. You sit at its base, place both hands on the soil, and whisper into the earth. You say, I have fed, I have swept, I have waited, I am ready. You feel nothing change, and yet everything is lighter when you stand again. You return home. You cook one final dish from memory, the spiced fish stew your mother taught you during your first moon cycle. You do not follow a recipe. You do not taste it. You serve it to the family and watch them eat. You notice who adds salt, who eats silently, who closes their eyes when they chew. These details matter. They are the last things you will learn in this life. You eat one spoonful, then press your fingers together and thank the pot. You clean it slowly. You leave it to dry in the sun. That night, you sleep without dreams. When you wake, you do not rise immediately. You listen to the house breathing, the wind through the slats, the footfalls of others, the temple bell in the far distance. You place your feet on the mat, tie your hair for the last time, and open the door. You step outside, not to leave, not yet, but to stand in the morning light one final time as the woman who has remembered everything. You are not a ghost. You are not a saint. You are a ritual, still unfolding. And now the lamps are low, and your breath moves slower, deeper. You've traveled through a life shaped not by conquest, not by kings, but by repetition silent, sacred gestures passed from one woman's hands to another's. These rituals were never written in books. They were not etched in stone, but they lived in the way rice was washed 3 times before a meal, in how silk was folded before nightfall, in the moments before speech when silence meant more than any word could. You're still here, lying still, the fan humming in the background, and maybe you feel it, that soft thread of memory winding through your fingers, a scent you can't quite name, A sound that feels like someone calling you from a long time ago? Let it stay. Let it linger. You don't need to understand it. Just breathe with it. Imagine a woman at the edge of dusk, barefoot on stone, holding a cup of jasmine water in both hands. She's not young, not old, just present. She looks at you once, then turns toward the altar, not to pray, but to listen. And in her stillness, you begin to understand life doesn't need to shout to matter. It hums. It returns. It leaves behind pieces of gold tucked beneath the sleeping mats, promises hidden in fabric seams, stories that wait patiently in the scent of burned rice. You're safe now. You're part of that long chain woven not of silk or ash or sandalwood, but of watching, waiting, enduring. Close your eyes. Let the empire fade. There are no more rituals tonight. Just rest.